the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone can stand up. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, welcome everyone to our second BAC meeting. A decent agenda tonight, so we're just going to get right into things. First off, rules for public comment. Anyone is available to make public comment. I just ask that it is associated to the budget planning process. If there is anything else that goes outside of budget planning, I'd be happy to give you some advice as far as where you could give that advice, either to the board or to another subcommittee. That being said, does anyone have a public comment? I don't see anyone in the crowd, but anyone in the committee? Yes, Izzy?
I have a question, and I think this is somewhat related to budget, but I know there are, for people who homeschool, there are a list of rules and regs and who they register and all that. How do we keep track of the numbers of homeschooled kids, families in the district? Because I'm sure it's somebody's job and therefore has a monetary.
I mean, so we could either put that as a parking lot item, or if you wanted to.
Whenever.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would say if we can fill that in as we're talking about kids and populations.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Anyone else? Seeing none, next item of business, just ground rules. Again, this is, I think everyone did a great job last time. This is a place for us all to kind of air our thoughts. I just ask that as people are giving their ideas, thoughts, and opinions, that everyone stay respectful, even if it doesn't meet your point of view. This is a time for everyone to talk, and Clay and Don and Lori need to hear that information so that they can help us build the best budget possible. So have a positive attitude, raise your hand, be courteous, and again, there is no bad thought or bad comments. The only thing that you can do wrong is to not air your thought. Moving on, and actually then the one other item that did come up last time is if folks can just be present. I just ask that cell phones stay off. Obviously, if there is a family emergency and your loved one says, "Do you need to call me now?" then feel free to step out and take a call. Otherwise, we just want you to be here for this period of time to lend your thoughts and ideas. All right, public comment. Draft minutes. Has anyone that has gone through the draft minutes, has anyone found anything that needs to be adjusted, changed, or amended? Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as presented for December 12th.
Peter Burns, second. All right, moving right along. So,
Say all in favor.
all in favor? All right. Aye, thank you. All right, and, all right, I'm going to hand it over to Dawn to talk about what is a budget.
So thank you, everybody, for coming tonight, and thank you for your comments at the last meeting. I appreciate that. This is kind of what I presented last year. So for those of you that weren't here, or those of you that were, it's just going to be a quick reminder. The differences in budgeting for a school versus for you at home versus a regular business. The income sources for a school are very limited. We have the state that makes a contribution, the state subsidy, the local taxes that are assessed to all of you that, are assessed to each town that you guys have to pay. We may have interest on our fund balance, on our bank accounts. And then there are other little things that we might have for revenue, like space rental. And we, very rarely charge. If it's a nonprofit, we don't charge for space rentals. If we have to cover some costs for like having coverage for our janitorial services, we may charge for that. but it's not a big revenue source at all. Our income sources are very, very fixed. On the home side, you guys all know this, you go to work, you have a job, so you have money from that. You may have rental income, interest on your bank accounts, or dividends on stocks. You may have Social Security income or unemployment or government aid. Depending on your circumstances, your income may be fixed or variable. It might be possible for you to go out and get a second job, but it might not be either, so it depends. On the business side, you have sales and services. You may have rentals and, again, interest and dividends. And businesses have the opportunity to do many things to increase their revenues. Try to increase their sales, increase the cost of their product, increase the cost of their services. So they try to do different things. Yes, we provide a service, we educate children, but you pay for that through your taxes. We can't just, charge every kid that comes through the door. That's not how it works. On the expense side of things, for the school, what you guys vote on every year, that's a legal and binding. So if our last year's budget was $63 million, we cannot go and spend $63 million and 1 cent. We are tied to that budget. In the business world, you may set up a budget, but you can go over the budget if you anticipate that your revenues are going to be higher. We don't have that luxury. It's this is your budget and you don't go over it. We can transfer, so the budget has 11 different cost centers, and we can transfer up to 5% within those cost centers with the board approval, but we're limited to that 5%. So if we have X amount in for facilities, Article 9, we can't exceed that by more than 5%, and we have to have that 5% somewhere else in the budget to pull it from. On your home side, your expense budget is not constrained. Yes, we all have budgets and we try to stay within those, but God forbid your furnace blows or your boiler goes, you have to find the money to repair those if you want to stay in your home. So, you can borrow money, you can dig into your savings. You have all these other options that we don't have. If we blew a boiler, we would either have to go to our capital reserve account and ask the board to spend that money, but we could not exceed our general operating budget, even if a catastrophe happened, without going to the voters to get that extra money. And on the business side, again, the expense budget is not constrained. You can follow a budget, but you can amend it as necessary. On page 14 of your packet, so the state mandates what the structure of our budget is. There are 11 articles. Those are listed there on the left. And again, there's when you go to the budget meeting, you'll vote on each one of those articles. However, when you go to the referendum and actually vote, you're voting just for the total. And I believe the question is worded so that it says, do you approve the budget that was approved at the last budget meeting? And again, that's all through, those are rules that we have to follow, how that question has to be asked. On the revenue side, again, state funding, local assessments, miscellaneous, and then we have a fund balance that we try to use to offset as much as we can to mitigate your taxes. So how do we come up with a budget? The normal process is to have the superintendent and the business manager create a budget. The school board then approves or rejects that budget. and then the legislative body adopts or rejects the budget.
Didn't mean to stop. Just for people, for Eric and I who've been here before, the legislative body is the two meetings that are held in May, one in May and one in June. We are an advisory committee, but just remember that this is whatever, in a sense, our advisory committee submits to the school board and the school board approves. It still has to be voted on in person in May at a meeting that's held, and then in June at the normal election it gets approved. So everyone has a chance to, let's say, have another, let's say, their say, both in May as well as in June. And the business office does a great job of going to every town. I know Mary and I have encountered this, is they come to Standish and they make a presentation to the town council well in advance of those meetings. So just understand, the legislative body, is not truly us. It's really the meetings in May and June.
Thank you, Todd. So at MSAD6, we take what's required and we try to add a little bit more. So Clay and I create a budget, and then we work with all of you to get input and insight as to what you think the community can and will support. We try to take those, what you give us for feedback, and we make changes if possible. Hopefully at the end of this process, you as a unit will make a recommendation to the Finance and Facilities Committee and the school board, and then the school board either approves or rejects that recommendation. So when Clay and I work on creating a budget, it's pretty much setting what we have for priorities for the year. Last year, if you'll remember, it was all about getting our people paid, trying to make our salaries more comparable to other areas so we can retain the staff that we have and keep the good people that we have. We take into account the current bargaining agreements. What we have 4 different bargaining units, and last year we were negotiating with 3 of them. So we have to look at, again, what we're going to pay, what the community will support. We look at inflation, we look at other economic factors. Then we work with you guys to get your input and insights. I'll be presenting a baseline budget on February 13th. And then we'll have a presentation of the supplemental requests on February 27th. And I hope to be able to give you guys enough detail so you can see what we're working with. I know last year, with everything being focused on salary and benefits, there really wasn't much of you guys didn't have a lot of input into what else we could add or not add, because with just those salary adjustments, we felt that we couldn't even go higher and still pass a budget in the community. So I'm hoping that this year there'll be a little bit more transparency and you'll have a lot more, be able to give a lot more feedback. So we'll go over the baseline budget and the supplementals. You guys will make recommendations. We'll have a discussion about what we have for a fund balance and what you think we should use and what we should keep in reserve. And I'll kind of give my theories on what I think we should do and listen to what you have to say about it. And then adjustments are made, and then again, you guys will make your recommendation, and the school board will ultimately approve or reject that. Once you've made your recommendation and the school board approves it and we move forward, there's a warrant to call a budget meeting like Todd was talking about. We have to deliver those to each municipality in the town. And they have to post it, and then we have that budget meeting. It's held at Bonnie Eagle High School. The town clerks are present, and they check in registered voters. As I said, you'll vote on each article with a show of hands. I think there's one that you have to do a secret ballot. Motions can be made to decrease expenses only. It's called a closed format. And then if the budget passes at that meeting, it goes to the referendum in June. If the budget fails at the budget meeting, it goes back to Clay and I to rework it and try to come up with something that people will vote yes on. Then it goes to the budget referendum. There's a voting day in each, there's one voting day, and there's a polling place in each municipality. And as I said, the state mandates the wording for that. And that's pretty much Budget 101. Are there any questions about that?
Peter?
For the last, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, every time we have this meeting at the budget that we're supposed to be presenting to the public and they vote on, there's some other events that are taking place either at the high school or the middle school that, one, makes it kind of difficult for those that want to participate in park, and two, it draws parents and voters of the district away that should be there to hear this and make a vote on it. So can we do something about that in the scheduling so that when we have this meeting, everybody has an opportunity to participate? Thank you.
Yes, you would think that wouldn't be as hard, right? It doesn't sound that hard. One of the things that was getting in the way was the arts night, and that one we definitely made sure we took care of. There are still things that I feel like pop up, and we will continue to be vigilant on checking the calendars, blocking those dates off, making sure everybody knows not to put anything on those nights, so. Yeah, there could be sports. That might be one thing, like with some of the scheduling, we can't. But things that we have direct control over, yeah, we should be able to do better.
Great comment. Anyone else? Great.
Okay, I provided some historical budget data. So for the last 10 years, we have our budget expenses. As you can see, the salaries have gone up a little bit every year. The benefits have gone up, and we've pretty much tried to keep that non-labor in line as much as we could. I know I can tell you right now, just from preliminary budget development that we're doing, we're probably not going to be able to do that this year. And you guys know this. The price of everything has gone up. So you can only imagine that as a school district, it's the same for us. We try to go buy something and the price has gone up 20%. So I have a lot of principals and managers who are telling me I can't keep it flat. I can't keep it at whatever percent. I need to there's just some things we need to provide, and it costs more. So you'll see that in the requests when I show them to you. The historical the revenue side, all these increases come from the taxpayers. I mean, there's a little bit of fund balance or carry forward that we can work with. The miscellaneous has gone up a little bit, and that's totally because of the interest income that we got. Because the rates were high, we realized some gains there. But the state, we don't have any numbers from them for next year yet, but that blue line is the state line on page 19, and you can see it's pretty constant. Our costs keep going up, and they keep saying they're funding education at 55%. I don't see it.
Can I say
Yep.
just a little bit about that, the 55%? So the state will tell you 55% because they're saying they're putting all the costs from the state, from all schools across the state, running them through a formula, and they're paying 55% of all the combined costs. But when that filters out to districts, it doesn't filter out that way, because there are some districts that get minimal funds from the state, right? They're mostly locally funded. Wells is the place that comes to mind. They don't get a lot of money from the state. So it's kind of a shell game. I don't know, that makes it sound bad. I'm not sure it's intentional, but it kind of feels that way, that it's a moving target, right? It's a moving target. So we don't see 55%. They're going to say it's 55%, and they can show you numbers to make it 55%, but doesn't look it on our end.
Includes higher education too.
And
think so.
it's 55% of essential programs and services.
Right.
And they tell you what those essential programs and services are. So if they say a district this size should only have one nurse in the district, which school's going to get that nurse? Who has the highest needs, right? So it's. Right.
And we'll get into a little more of that probably when we
Yeah.
look at the ED 279 at some point.
Any questions on the historical data?
Just for the history of this is that, understand that if you take salaries and benefits, if you looked at that chart and your brain does what my brain does, that's roughly 80% of our budget is people, okay? That's for 25. For 24, it's 77%. If you go back, for Peter, Mary, Mr. Moran, and a bunch of us, you go back 10 years, it was 73, 75%. It's not like it's really gone up that much. We've always spent the vast majority of our money is spent on salary and benefits. And I always have fun with the fact of can we get cheaper pencils? The reality is that our people are one of the most critical elements of our school district, and there are just limiting, as Don said, there's just limiting factors. But our contracts are negotiated by the school board, not by us, and they're set at 3-year term, meaning usually the contracts are 3 years. So they're locked in. So unfortunately, our business manager and our superintendent and the school board are stuck with the fact that if they've negotiated in good faith, they can't really change the salaries and benefits. The only thing is if staff goes down or if there's reductions, but those are nominal changes. Just over the history of it is pretty much between, we spend a large chunk of our budget on salary and benefits.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that a little bit, the only way, 2 years ago, I think we spent a lot of time discussing school supplies and whether parents should have to bring them in, and that's fine to have those conversations about. That is not a huge part of this budget. It's really the salary and benefits of the people. So when we really need to talk about reducing a budget, there is really only one way to do that substantially, and that is to have less people. And the double-edged sword to that is the kids are the ones who pay the ultimate cost for that, for having higher ratios, less available to them. And a lot of these people that wouldn't work for us anymore are the same people that are taxpayers. We have a lot of people who live in the community and work in the community. So it's almost like a cannibalizing process of, right, we cut the budget, we cut people to save taxes, but the people that we cut are often the people that are paying the taxes. And that's just it's a fact, really, of this process, so.
The page 21 I put in there because Mrs. Stiles had asked about what do we do with our money last year. So this is a page out of our audit, and it shows the revenues over expenses. We had the budget of $66,990,149.
And to clarify, Don, this is FY what?
24.
FY '24. So not this current fiscal year, but the previous.
Right, the previous year. So our revenues over our expenses, our revenues, we were able to collect $780,337 more than what was budgeted. On the expense side, we were under our budget by $2,677,085. So we're very frugal with our money. I'm a watchdog, and I ask questions of our principals all the time when requisitions come through, and if they don't make sense to me, or if if I ask questions, and they don't always like that, but I feel it's my job to be as prudent as I can with your money. So this is what happened last year.
And the expended fund balance was the planned expended fund balance. That wasn't an additionally accrued cost, correct?
So the expended, what was in the budget last year with fund balance was 3.5 million?
Yep.
We didn't spend that.
Okay.
We spent $42,578 of that 3.5 million. So our fund balance is pretty close to what it was last year at this time.
And can I just add that if anyone wants to tune in, our auditor is reviewing the audit at the next school board meeting. I think that's the plan. And one of the things, again, that's come up before in these conversations at Budget Advisory is, well, $3.5 million, that's a lot. You know, you overshot your target, right? Well, it's not really a lot in a budget this large, especially with all the things that Don shared earlier, how we don't have the option to come short. Like, it's illegal. Like, we can't overspend our budget. And we have to be able to anticipate making payroll to pay our people, and our payroll is pretty large. So it all leads to the fact that the auditor is going to tell you, it's a Tuesday night, actually. What night?
Yeah.
20, I forget the date, but anyway, it's
21st.
21st, thank you. And that we have our fund balance is appropriate for a district our size, an organization our size, a budget our size. It is not seen by professionals who know school budgeting as like fluffed or excessive or inappropriate. So
You look at like UNE, I think we're like 260 million as far as like backup funds. So yeah, that's, in the grand scheme of things, it's small.
Understanding that a big chunk of this is insurance, healthcare, every year, and that never goes down. Have there been any studies or what-ifs done if universal health care were available? Is that you know, understanding, of course, that's another taxpayer-funded, but I guess it would be interesting to know. Because there's a lot of retired physicians writing letters every week to the paper about how universal health care really needs to be part of the plan.
right, basically, if it wasn't an employer-sponsored plan, if we didn't have to deal with that and have that be part of our budget, right? It's a significant number. I mean, it is.
Any other questions? You're up.
Okay, so I was trying to keep this simple. I do wish I had, I was working on a different page for this enrollment, for that first, page 22, that had some averages and things on it. I was trying to figure out if I could print it and pass it out to you, but I'm struggling because I've lost my toolbar somehow. But I can still walk you through it. So that first page shows our current, I think this was actually October. I kept everything in October because that's when we have to report to the state. That's often when they freeze our enrollment at some point and they base everything off that. So everything is October of 2024 that I'm showing you tonight, plus some historical stuff. So that grid is something we include in the school board packet each month that shows the enrollment of every school, all the classrooms, well, not at the high school, middle school, but at the elementary, it kind of breaks it out by how many classrooms. I did find a couple of errors on there that we need to fix. One of them is at Georgie Jack, it's not 3.5, 4.5. They don't have a split class this year at Georgie Jack. I believe they have 2 fourths and 2 fifths. So it's still a total of 8 teachers, but there isn't a half, a split grade, 4th and 5th there. The other mistake is that at Hollis, I think it shows, where are we? 3 classrooms in 3rd grade, and there are only 2. Yeah. So I think some of these never got changed from the template from the past. So thank you for that, Mr. Pendleton. But the student numbers are as of October. So when you do the averages on that, let me change that, Buxton. I have a spreadsheet going here. Let me change that to 5. So what that means is that the average class size in our schools is right around 17, oh, sorry, 4. That's a big difference. Yeah, so 17.3 is the school-wide average with the correct staffing at Buxton. So 17.3 at Buxton, Edna 17.4, Georgie Jack 17.5, HB Emory 17.6, Hollis is smaller at 15.3, and then Steep Falls is 17. So there's a pretty even distribution of students around the district, and that is something that over the last, especially since COVID, the district had committed to keeping the class sizes lower. I can think of not that long ago, even just before COVID at Georgie Jack, we commonly were having 23 students, 24 students in a class at Georgie Jack. So it's not unheard of to have higher class sizes, but this is what we have right now in our district, and it is pretty evenly distributed. And I think one of the challenges, right, when you look at this, if you look at Buxton Center, and I know it's a little bit small, Craig has more ability to move positions around. If he has an outgoing 5th grade and he needs a little more in kindergarten, he can kind of move positions within his building and kind of reconfigure things. He doesn't necessarily need to ask for more teachers. We don't have to take away a lot, though sometimes we have, right? Some of the smaller schools, they're stuck with these in-betweens, right? And Hollis was actually a good example because for a lot of years that was like 44 kids or something, 45 kids, but in 1st grade, when you have 45 kids and some of them are really high needs, it's hard to split them in 2, but when you split them 3 ways, it's kind of too small of a class. And because we have all of these school buildings, it's harder to use our staff as efficiently. If you just put them, if you took the total number of students and divided them by the total number of teachers, we could do better with our ratios if we had them all in one site, let's say, right? But we can't. That's not our district. It's not the way we're configured. And we also can't ask teachers to go in and have 30 kids in their classroom. So there are some challenges with the way our enrollment evens out, but we're currently in a pretty good place, I would say. I think it's hard pressed to look at that and say that we have too large of classes. Within that, though, there are challenges. What doesn't show is the students who take up more of the teacher's time, who take up more resources, and you can have 15 kids, but you have 1 or 2 really challenging kids, and they can feel like a lot more than that. And vice versa. You can have 25 really compliant, studious kids, and you don't even notice they're in the room. So there's more to it than just the numbers. And then the bottom green totals, right, are if you total up the whole grade level for the district. And I just do want to draw your attention to a couple things there. So you can see the numbers. If you have pre-K, that's a fixed point. 96 is the most it could be because we only have a certain number of classrooms for pre-K. So the day this was taken, we had 1 spot that wasn't filled. Kindergarten at 216 is the lowest that's been in a long time. If you look across that row, because our most common, we're looking at 255, 240, 248, 260, 240, 240. And then if you go to the grade 11 group, 280. There was a time where these numbers were all 280, 300, right? So our enrollments have gone down, but when you look across, I'm not sure that 216 is going to be the norm. Any of the enrollment projections I've looked at is that the 240s are kind of where we've leveled out. And if these housing, the new housing and everything in the district, especially in Standish, comes through, then I don't see any reason to see why these are going to change. I don't see them jumping through the roof, but I also don't see them dropping off. But despite what people want on a snow day, I can't predict the future necessarily. I wish I could. But it is significant that in kindergarten we only had 216 students this year, and that's, thinking of Mr. Pendleton's comment about we had 6 kindergartens, 4, that we made the adjustment to reflect the reduced enrollment. And then below that are a little bit of historical data. It's June of 23 and June of 24, just for comparison, for what it's worth. So you can see the total number on the right-hand side there in the whole district. 3,307 as of October was our enrollment. It's pretty similar to that right now. Hasn't changed a lot. And then you can see it's not that different from the other years. So then the next page, you can see a side-by-side trend line here. So on the right, the green trend line is our total district enrollment starting in 15-16 up until October of this year. So that's a steady decline from 3,681 to 3,307. And last year, we actually were up from the year before, and then we went back down a little bit. And I know the question comes up about staffing. Well, the left slide shows our EPS reported staff from the 279, and that's what the state says we should have for staffing. And you can see that that staffing has generally reflected the trend in decreased enrollment.
That's classroom teacher staff.
Yeah, it's classroom teachers. It doesn't count every single human, but it's germane to this conversation about class sizes, basically, right? So we make adjustments as the class sizes have reduced. There are situations where we're able to offer more programming by changing staff into something else, and I think the best example of that I can think of recently is we were having issues at the high school with students not getting their needs met, which was leading to students they'd come to school every day and not go to class, walk around the hallways. The assistant principals would spend all day chasing them, get back to class, in-school suspension, detentions, parent meetings. It was just taking up tons of time. These kids, meanwhile, weren't learning anything. So clearly we weren't meeting their needs. So the principal and the team at the high school decided to take 2 of their departmental positions, adjust the scheduling, and create an alternative program that's outside of TLC for really high-needs kids that just need something different. And it's 2 teachers and, a dozen kids was the plan. And it's not perfect, but there is some success there of kids doing more than they've ever done. And it is now allowing the staff at the high school to focus their energies on what they're there to do. So that's an example of, we probably could have cut 2 positions, but instead we used them differently to meet needs in the district. Another example is we have a few more special ed positions, which aren't reflected in this chart, but we were very stable when I looked. I do have a chart with that on there, but there was like 39 special ed teachers was the number for 9 years. But then, of course, it went up during COVID, came back down. But we have a couple of new special ed programs across the district because we can't keep sending kids to Buxton. We can't send everyone to Buxton. So we put a couple of satellite programs, one in Standish and one in Hollis, for kids with higher needs. Those are 2 additional classrooms that wouldn't have been accounted for 9 years ago. But we didn't come and really ask for more staff, right, to do that. We took staff we had, we made it work. So that's sort of the real overview of our staffing and our enrollment, and I'm happy to take any questions. And if you have specific things that you didn't hear tonight, if I can't answer them tonight, I'm happy to dig them up for you.
Oh, sorry, just if you look at the next page, but don't flip the next page because in case questions come up in this one, there is the agenda, like there are some of the things that came up, or questions that were put to Eric and I at the last meeting about school construction application, the rest of it. Dawn has laid out the schedule. That some of that stuff is going to come up later. That's why it's not being covered tonight. Tonight's not a shorter meeting by intention. It's just because, this is more of a recap, but there are some things that are going to come up down the road.
Questions? I have one. Is there do you have the current delta between your allocated staff and who's currently hired? So, do you know how many open roles?
Unfilled positions. Yeah. I don't have the exact number, but I think we're in a pretty good spot right now, actually. Better than we've been. And surprise, when we were struggling, it's because we weren't competitive with pay.
Yeah.
Now that we're more competitive with pay, not the highest paying by any means, but competitive, it gives people a reason to work here. And we haven't struggled as much to fill our position. So I'm sure there are some things we could fill, but I am not sitting here thinking about, school counselors are hard. When we lose a counselor, we're struggling to find counselors. And we definitely have one opening right now for a school counselor. But it's one-off things like that more than, significant big chunks of people, right? And, or any one particular employee group. So it's much better than it's been in 3 years.
Is he then Peter?
So in these 2 graphs, that 238.6 bump up in staff, is that COVID related, or is that the program that you just?
No, that particular one is COVID, because during the coming back from COVID, we use COVID funds to add teachers in classrooms, and something that I really think this district did really well, and that was under Paul Penna, was not make all those positions permanent, or string people along for years and then tell them 3 years later they're out of a job. We basically, in a 2-year cycle, determined which ones we needed to keep and which ones we could get rid of by attrition. So when people retired or left, we just reconfigured people, and we didn't have to cut anybody, and we were able to get the staffing level back sort of down on the same trend it had been on.
So that, again, was sort of playing musical chairs with
Yep.
positions. Okay.
Yeah. And
thank
we
you.
were clear that year when we hired people, this might be a 1 year or 2 year position, and when they were good, if people were good, we hung on to them and filled other positions that opened up.
Peter?
How about bus drivers? Where do we stand there?
Yeah, I think Sarah Marian, our transportation director, would not want me to say we're in good shape, because we always could use bus drivers. I think we are covering runs, but we are always looking for spares or people who want to be trained, because we can always use more. I think and you know, Mary Jo could probably speak to this a little, but I think we cover our runs, but sometimes that's people pitching in and picking up extra when people are sick, but not like it was a couple years ago where we were routinely short, having to cancel runs all the time. Much better position than we were.
Great. All right. So to sum things up, any questions that have come out of tonight versus as far as the overall process of forming the budget, where we have been and where we are now? And you will be going into more detail, obviously, Don, with the current fiscal year at future meetings, but with the information that was provided. Any questions? Yes.
Clay, you mentioned something about the school counselor. What school is missing a counselor?
Well, there is an opening at Hollis, but I'll also say I think there's at least one more at Buxton, maybe another spot that I can't think of right now, where we've filled a school counselor position with a social worker, so we have somebody in there to support kids, but it's not the somebody we're looking for, because we can't find anyone with that licensing. There aren't enough people applying for the job. So technically it's one open spot, Pat, but there's at least one other one that we really would prefer to have a school counselor, because it's a different job. A social worker usually does more one-on-one work with students, and school counselors do lessons and help, kind of with the whole school student population.
And the social worker you're talking about, do you have one at every school or just on certain schools?
Yes, some share, but every school has access to social workers. And that's something that this chart doesn't show, but that was something the district has increased in the last 5 years. We used to have, we kind of had been steady at about 10 special ed social workers, and they were primarily for kids with IEPs. And something that the district committed to was a need for all kids to have access to social workers. So we've added, I think, over the years, about 5 social workers district-wide for regular education students that anybody could see with parent permission.
Okay, and the social workers that you're hiring, are they all master's degrees or are they all below?
They have to have a master's to have a license,
Well,
even a non.
but they have to, some are having bachelor's degrees and working on licensing, and we have a way. I mean, Lori's not wrong. I mean, a fully certified social worker would have a master's degree. Sometimes we are hiring people who are getting ready to take their boards or finishing their programs, anticipating they'll finish that.
Okay, because it's like everything else, like when you hire a teacher and they have a master's degree, you have to pay them as master's degree pay, correct? So
Yeah.
a social worker is being paid at master's degree pay.
Yes.
Most of them. So a student counselor would be less expensive.
No, counselors actually also have to have a master's degree to be fully certified too.
But okay, so the master's degree level, is it the same pay across the board for no matter who?
Master's degree is a scale in the bargaining unit, and it is more pay. And it doesn't matter what your position is. If you have, it's based on your degree and your years of experience. Those
Okay.
are the only two things. It doesn't matter if you're a science teacher or a social worker or
Okay.
honestly a nurse, the way our contract works,
Okay,
or a kindergarten teacher. If you have a master's degree in 5 years, that's what you get.
okay, thank you.
All right. We can look at our next agendas that are coming up on the next slide. So the next meeting will be January 23rd. We'll be going over academic data and hopefully hear something about school construction and what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have some information, not a lot, but we can tell you what we have for information.
Small glimmer of
Yeah, there's
what the future
something
may
to
be.
report.
Yeah.
It's not any great shakes, but it's something.
Then going into the baseline budget and the non-labor budget detail, and then followed by the ED 279 and supplemental requests, and then preliminary proposed budget and tax impacts. So if we're going to be coming up with questions for next round, definitely feel free to email myself and Todd in regards to academic data and school construction. If you have any other questions that sits outside of the next meeting, again, feel free to email us so that we can send things over to Don and Clay and Lori so that they can prepare future meeting packets. Are there any other broader questions that sit outside of what we covered tonight that you would like to hear more about or that you have questions on to help you make decisions? Yes.
Just me again. On the membership, still accepting applications, you say 2 parents, guardians, or residents. Now, does it matter where they come from, or do you have a limit, like Standish has so many, and Buxton has so many, and Hollis has so many?
There isn't a limit. I think when the Finance and Facilities Committee is considering the applications as a whole, that was something that would be considered, but when we can't fill all the seats, I think we're happy to have anyone who will participate. I mean, if, Dawn wants to.
Yeah, look at me, I'm here, anyway.
Chime in, but we're happy to have the participation, so we wouldn't say, no, we have too many people from Standish, so if you're from Standish, don't apply. We wouldn't say that at this
Okay,
point.
all right. I just wondered if you broke it down to a certain amount of.
Ideally, we'd have a diverse group, but, I don't think, if we had 5 people apply for 2 spots, that might be a tiebreaker. But right now, we will take people who are interested in being part of the group.
Yeah, no
Okay.
harassing the students. Sorry, we'd love to have more students present, but like, Hannah has enough on her plate, but like, we'd love to have more student representation, but no harassing kids or grandkids into doing this unless they really want to do it. I was told this by my wife, just in case, because.
As Todd pointed out to me, the one other item, we are still accepting applications for the BAC. So if you have friends that would like to be riveted by ED 279 and budgets and baselines and supplementals, feel free to send them our way. It is a great process. So we do want people participating from all areas of our towns, including the municipalities, parents, teachers. I believe there's even one school board position open as well. Don, if you want to poke some of your friends over your way, feel free to send another board member our way.
And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to Eric. Like, he's been on the, the BAC for years. And we can answer questions about,
Absolutely.
And always, by the way, Eric and I were talking about this before the meeting because we've missed meetings before. If you have family commitments or travel, always feel free to remember these meetings are taped. But it's never like outside of the voting meetings when we get to the actual kind of making of recommendations, please put your family's needs and your safety always, because these things are something that you can catch up on very quickly on. Or if there's a question that happened at the last meeting, don't feel that, we went past it. You can always reach out to Eric and say, look, I'd love to go back over the enrollment figures and ask a question, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I believe in previous years, we've allowed 3 absences, but at the same time, if that happens, we're still willing to work with you. I would just ask that maybe we talk on the side about what has happened at previous meetings, just to catch you up, so you can be informed. Otherwise, absolutely. I would just ask that you let us know so that we can prepare and that we can mark things off. All right. The last item would be public comment. I know we already had public comment and the bleachers are empty, but does anyone have any comments to make before we adjourn? Yes.
I'm wondering if it wouldn't be helpful for Dawn or Mr. Gleason or Laurie to provide us with some information about how the state arrives at its funding figures so that we can compare this district to Wells, Falmouth, Yarmouth, Aroostook County, so that folks can better understand why we get the money we do and why some other places don't and some places get more. I found that to be very helpful when I was in the legislature, that, to learn how funding works.
Yeah, because there's things that people, I think a lot of people don't really understand, even economic growth factor or something as a multiplier, depending on what region you're in, based on the labor market, right? Things like that, yep.
That's a great idea. Can we fit that into the February 13th meeting? Looks like that probably make the most sense.
Well, we'll take a look and see where we can, maybe we'll have it ready, and then wherever it fits, we can
Awesome.
get it in there.
Great. Waiting for the ever-present motion.
He and I won't do it.
Who wants to leave? If we can stay here the whole night, guys. All right, motion to adjourn. Do I see a second? All right. All right. All those in favor? All those who want to stay? Seeing none. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you again. Get home safe.